Very good evening, everyone. Am I audible to everyone? Thank you. Thank you so much. So again, a warm welcome and a very good evening to all dignitaries, organizers, uh, faculties, and all delegates presented in this 1 month certificate program on effective research writing. Today, again uh, we have our respected resource person, Dr. Manushi Srivastava ma'am, who already delivered a second lecture of this program. We all aware about the ma'am is currently serving as a professor of medical sociology in the Department of Community Medicine at the Institute of Medical Science, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. With a prolific career as a medical sociologist, our resource person has made significant contributions to the field authoring approximately 4 dozen national and international papers. Her expertise extends beyond academia as she has been invited as a guest speaker to Smith College, USA, where she shared her insights on public health and challenges in India. Additionally, Ma'am served as an invited faculty member in the Reputed Management Institute, demonstrating her commitment to impactful research. She has successfully led a major ICMR-funded project also as a principal investigator and has actively participated as a co-investigator in various research endeavors. Moreover, she shoulders significant responsibilities as the nodal officer of Swachh Bharat Summer Internship Program and serve as a coordinator of Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, showcasing her dedication to community engagement and social initiatives. This is again with great pleasure that I'm welcoming ma'am to deliver one more session in this 1 month certificate program on effective research writing. Please, ma'am, welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Amit. Am I audible, Amit?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Perfectly audible, ma'am.
Am I
Welcome, ma'am.
visible too?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Visible, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So, thanks again to the organizers for giving me this beautiful opportunity to interact with all the participants registered in this 1 month online research methodology program. And I really feel privileged to have this interaction session with all the participants. And today is my second lecture. I have already delivered a lecture on objective framing, how to decide the topic. So you must have remember, I think, I hope. And this is my second lecture on methodology, which is I should say, is the most important component of uh, of any research program or any thesis or research work. So, without wasting any more time, I'm going to share my slides first. Uh, uh, Amit, please tell me whether it is visible or not.
Visible, ma'am. And this is
Visible.
changing. Yes.
And it's changing also?
Yes, yes, ma'am. It's changing also.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Perfect. So I'm coming on my first slide, that is research methodology. How to set up methodology section in thesis. Methodology is very important, that we all know. We all know that without a strong methodology, we can't conduct a good research. If we have to conduct a research, we have to plan our study first, and planning means we have to set a strong methodology. So, and it is really very challenging work. I should not say tough, but it's challenging. A very systematic thought should be given, a good review of literature should be there, a good homework should be done before deciding the methodology or plan of the study, so that we can conduct a good research on it. So what is exactly methodology and what component should come in the methodology? Let's start our session with this specific slide. What is methodology section in thesis? The methodology describes the broad philosophical underpinning to your chosen research methods. Method is not methodology, let it be very clear. So, including whether you are going for qualitative or quantitative methods or for mixed method, that is both qualitative followed by quantitative or quantitative followed by qualitative, and why you are choosing this specific pattern of methods is come in methodology. So we all understand that in any dissertation or in any thesis or in any MD or in any PhD or in MPhil dissertation, there should be a part which is called methodology, and it is not quite same as methods. Methods is completely different. So methodology provides the information on where and how the research was conducted for the thesis with sufficient details so that another researcher would be able to take help from the study. Future researcher. If you have conducted a research with a strong methodology, future researcher must get help from that methodology by getting some idea that from where and how this research has been conducted and what a specific area is left to be researched in future. So this is what we mean by methodology. Am I audible, Amit?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. And slides are also changing?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. So methodology section of a research answers two main questions. Keep it in mind always. How was the data collected or generated? How was the data collected means whatsoever is in this specific question. How was the data collected means your research design, your sampling frame, your universe, your sample size, your population under study. These are the points that should come under first question, that is, how was the data collected or generated? And the second question that you have to answer in your methodology section is how was it analyzed? It means the way of analysis, interpretation, discussion, conclusion, result, all comes under how was it analyzed. So these are the two major questions that should be answered by a good methodology section. So the specific research tools or strategies that you utilized to study the underlying hypothesis and research questions in the methodology section. So the writing should be very direct and precise. Methodology should not be very lengthy, should not be very extensive. It should be very direct. Which research design you are going to take, what type of study, whether it is the universe you have to define directly, the population, its size, the sampling frame. These are some of the direct points that you have to answer in your methodology section, and it should be very precise also. And always keep in mind that research methodology should be written in past tense only, because without writing the methodology or without planning your study you can't conduct a study. So if you are planning to conduct finally your study, the plan has must have been written earlier, so it should be written in past tense always. So these 3 points you have to keep in your mind, and the two questions that you have to answer while writing your methodology section. Fine. So, what is exactly hypothesis? See, in my first lecture, I have discussed about objective. So, if we want to start our research, there must be a research question. There must be some specific objectives. Fine. Then the next section, that is methodology, which is the key part of your research, starts from a hypothesis. What is exactly you mean by hypothesis? Hypothesis means a educated guess, a tentative statement which will be scientifically proven or not proven while conducting the research. So scientists make an educated guess that can be tested is called hypothesis. This is one of the beautiful and smallest definition of hypothesis that you can always keep in your mind. Scientists or researchers make an educated guess. Educated guess means that guess is not without groundwork. That guess should be very tentative, and that guess should be an educated guess, means with some strong review of literature that can be tested with passage of time while conducting your research. So this is basically hypothesis. There are number of definitions for hypothesis like this. Hypothesis is an assumption which can be tested and can be proved to be right or wrong while conducting the research. Hypotheses are tentative but intelligent guesses, educated guesses as to the solution of the problem. Hypothesis is a specific statement of prediction. It is not mere prediction without any groundwork, but it is a specific statement of prediction. It describes in concrete terms that you expect to happen in the study, right? Similarly, hypothesis is an assumption about the population of the study that you have identified for your research work, or sometimes it delimits. 1 minute. Yeah, it delimits the area of research. Yes, this is very important version of hypothesis definition, that it delimits the area of research and keeps the researcher on the right track. It delimits the researcher, but it keeps on track. This is the beauty of the hypothesis. That limits, that boundaries are not there, but there is right track on which it is expected that a researcher should move, which is termed as hypothesis. There are two type of hypothesis, we all know, but sometime our students used to ask that, madam, which hypothesis is good, which hypothesis we should keep. Both the hypotheses are okay. They are exist in the research world because both have their own justifications, but a researcher should be always stand unbiased. Your inclination towards any result should not be shown initially without testing the hypothesis. So we used to say that it is better to frame null hypothesis as compared to alternate hypothesis. But no one is wrong. Not null hypothesis nor alternate hypothesis. Okay? So, what is exactly null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is stated negatively. Negatively means no difference, no relationship, which shows researchers' unbiased approach. No difference, no relationship. It means one variable and the next variable, to if we are going to study between two variables, their relationship, their comparison, their association, it means we are establishing a statement in which we are mentioning that there is no relationship between these two variables, or there is no difference between these two treatment patterns. For example, if we are going to conduct a superiority trial or inferiority trial, or if we are trying to establish relationship between two variables, and in such case if we are showing that there is no difference or there is no relationship, such type of negative statements is termed as null hypothesis, and it can be represented as HO or H0. For example, there is no relationship between the first variable is family's income and the second variable is nutritional status of family members. Even though if we have the assumption that yes, family's income directly related or directly affect nutritional status of family members, then also this type of null hypothesis is more appropriate because it shows that researcher is not inclined towards any result of the study. So there is no relationship between a family's income and nutritional status of family members is null hypothesis. That you will conduct a study and you will prove it as wrong or prove it as right whatsoever. However, the alternate hypothesis, it is the hypothesis that describes the researcher's prediction. that there exists a relationship between two variables, or it is the opposite of null hypothesis, and it represents as HA or H1. So for example of alternate hypothesis, we can mention the statement that there is a definite relationship between family's income and nutritional status of family, or treatment A is superior than treatment B, or if we want to frame a null hypothesis, no treatment is superior than the other. Both treatments are at par to each other. Such type of statements are basically comes under null hypothesis. So this is null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Both are okay, but there is, I mean, preferable is null hypothesis. What comes under methodology section of the thesis? If you want to check that whether your methodology section is complete in all sense or not, then you can put a light on these 6 components. In your methodology section, universe of the study should be mentioned, type of the study that you are going to take, tool of the study that you are taking help of, sampling technique of the study, the exact sample size of the study, and inclusion and exclusion criteria of the study. These are the 6 the important components of methodology section that should be in your methodology. Fine. So there are basically 6 components: universe of study, type of study, that is research design, tool of the study, which you are going to use for data collection or for survey, sampling technique of the study, which specific technique you are going to use for sampling calculation, exact sample size of the study, which should have the variability, good level of variability for for external validity, as well as it should be representative enough for your universe also, and inclusion and exclusion criteria, of course. So inclusion first and exclusion later on. So these are the 6 components that should come in your methodology section. Fine. So what is exactly universe? Total of items is set of entire units of objects, physical things or subjects, that is human beings, selected for the study. And what is exactly population? Population refers to the total of items about which information is desired. So let's understand it with simple example. Universe can be all the teachers, but if you want to confine your study on only primary teachers, then your population will be, study population will be all primary teachers. If you want to confine your study on only college teachers, then your population will be college teachers. However, the universe will be all the teachers. And population size means the total number of units present in the population. For example, your universe will be all the teachers, but you are confining your study on primary teachers. So your population of the study is primary teachers, and the population size is the total number of primary teachers in the defined area. That is your population size. Am I clear? Am I clear? Universe, your population, and then population size. These are the 3 terms sometimes student used to get confused in these terminologies. Universe is not population. Population is basically the items that you are going to study about. Universe is the total of those items, entire units having the same features. And population size is exact number of units that you are going to study, that is only primary teachers in the defined area or only college teachers in the defined area. So this is population size. Okay, now I'm moving ahead. What is types of study? I'm very sure that in coming days you will go through these concepts in detail, and very good speakers are there to make it more clear. I have to confine myself in just basic concepts of methodology writing. So type of study means the specific design that you are going to adopt. So, studies can be classified into two major groups: observational studies and experimental or interventional studies. Now, observational studies get further classified into two groups: descriptive studies and analytical studies. Further, descriptive studies categorize into three: surveys, case studies, and correlational studies. However, the analytical studies, which is the part of observational study, further divided into four categories: ecological or correlational studies, cross sectional or prevalence studies, case control or case reference studies, and cohort studies. I'm just mentioning the name of type of studies so that in coming days you will be able to link that what specific observational studies are and what exactly experimental or interventional studies are. Experimental or interventional studies further divided into three categories, three types of experimental studies, I should say, or interventional studies. First is RCTs or clinical trials, randomized control trials or clinical trials. The second is field trials or community intervention studies. And third is community trials. So the studies, type of studies or designs can be broadly classified into two groups, that is observational studies and experimental or interventional studies. I'm just mentioning the name because if I will go for detailed explanation, it will take a lot of time. You have to keep in mind that in the coming days you have to get the idea on these specific type of studies, which is very important for designing your methodology section. Fine. Now, how you will decide that which type of study will be used for which type of plan, or which study design should be used for which type of which purpose. So there is a beautiful table I have for you. It is a very, ready to use type of table, because study design largely depends on the purpose. What is the purpose of the study? So, for example, if we want to determine the frequency and burden of the disease, frequency and burden of the disease can only be done with the help of cross sectional study, which we usually mention as prevalence study, or cohort study, which we usually mention as incidence study. So, burden of disease and frequency of disease can be studied with the help of two study designs, that is cross sectional study or cohort study. Next, to determine the risk factor, we can't use cross sectional study because it is basically a one time blanket approach, one time contact. So we can't come out with risk factors. So to determine the risk factor, we can conduct cohort study or case control study. These are the two research design which is most appropriate to determine the risk factor. Now, if we want to determine the prognosis of the study, then only cohort study will be the best option for prognosis of the study or prognosis of the disease. To determine the efficacy or effectiveness of a new treatment, or to compare the effectiveness of two treatment plans, or to define which one is superior or which one is inferior, then clinical trials or community interventions are the best suited studies designs for this specific purpose. And if we want to evaluate that the specific community program is good enough to be continued or not, then such type of purpose the evaluation program should be designed or should be conducted. So the purpose will be there to decide which type of study design we should use. So if you want to ask that, ma'am, which study design for example, mostly students used to ask, ma'am, cross sectional design is good, I think I should use cross sectional design, and they are going to study the prognosis. So just by contacting for one time contact, how it is possible to get the opinion about prognosis, get the idea about prognosis? So it is next to impossible. If research design, study design is wrong, then your complete study will not get the exact idea or not get the good results. So study design, selection of study design should be very, I mean, very thoughtful process, should be very carefully decided, right? So I always used to suggest my students also to go through Leon Goddess, that is Epidemiology, Book of Epidemiology by Leon Goddess, which is one of the very good book, which addresses study design in a very crisp manner with good examples and in very simple words, easy to understand. So I always used to suggest Leon Goddess. What are the tools of the study? Tools means how to collect data. We have decided the type of study design. Now we have to identify the tool which can be used for cross sectional study, what tool we can use, or for case control study, what tool we can use, or for clinical trial, what tool we can use. So there are a number of tools, but I am here discussing the four major tools. First, the questionnaires. Questionnaires are basically for literate population, educated population, where we can frame the questionnaire, we can give them, and later on, after 2 days, after 4 days, whatsoever you feel, we can go and collect those questionnaires. If the population is educated enough to understand the question by themselves and give the appropriate answer, then questionnaire will be the best suited way. Then interview. If you want to just interview the people and you want to record with their permission, it is interview. If you want to interview and record the answers by your own, that is interview schedule. You have a schedule, you used to keep it in your hand, you interview the respondent, and by getting their responses you are just noting it down in the schedule. This is interview schedule, but the name of the tool is schedule. The fourth one is scales. This you usually use in qualitative studies, not in quantitative studies. For for example, uh, if you want to, uh, how if, for example, must have heard about Likert scale. Likert scale, 5 point scale or 10 point scale or chapati diagram. These are some of the scales in which qualitative feelings or qualitative perceptions you use to record. So in this type of scales, you used to mention the variables like, how much you like a sweet, very much, you like it, neutral, not like it, you completely dislike. So these are some of the qualitative feelings that you use to scale. So the tool name is scales, and there are number of scales, various scales that you can use while conducting your research. So this comes under the tools of the study. Now, sampling technique, again very important component. Sampling technique can be broadly divided into two categories: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling has five major categories. Simple random sampling is one of the most commonest probability sampling technique, which we use most of the time. Now, stratified sampling, we define some of the stratas and we used to identify or select some of the sample from each strata. Systematic sampling, in which we used to define the complete set of units in a systematic way, and we used to sample from each of the section. Cluster sampling, in which we, in one village we could have number of clusters. There are, for example, 20 cluster or 10 cluster sampling. So we distributed the complete village into 10 clusters, and from each cluster randomly we used to take some of the samples, so that it can be representative enough for the complete village. And multi-stage sampling is different stages. For example, district, first stage, you identified two or three. Out districts, you identified some of the blood blocks, you have identified some of the viscera, identified some stage each you have identified some of them. You have the formality samplings, some of the cells which is uh, you onions, you identified some of the cardiologists to whom you are going to interview. That is convenience sampling. You have identified some of the teachers or some of the stakeholders. That is convenience sampling. As per your convenience, you have identified. For example, see, convenience and purposive. Purposive is specifically if for a specific purpose you have identified. Convenience is as per your convenience you have taken. There is minute difference. Try to understand. Convenience means it is convenient for me to interview the doctors, those who are in IMS. That is convenience. Purposive means I purposively keeping in mind the objective of my research, I have identified some cardiologist to take their interview. That is purposive. Quota sampling is you have identified some quota. Quota means some specific, for example, from some samples from AIMS Delhi quota, some from IMS, some from state medical colleges, some from private medical colleges. So you have defined some quota and you have identified some of the sampling from each quota. That is quota sampling. And snowball sampling is very interesting sampling technique which is used for rare purposes. For example, if you want to interview some of the suicide attendees, or if you want to interview some of the patients of HIV/AIDS. So it is very tough to get the name and I mean name of the uh, uh, patients of AIDS. So if you could get name of one or two, you can ask them. If you know someone else, please tell us the detail so that we can contact them. So similarly, like a small snowball, if you roll it down from a mountain, it gradually adds the snow and becomes bigger and bigger. Similarly, in snowball sampling technique, with one or two unit you used to start, and by asking them to get the name of some other people of similar nature or similar features, you will getting more and more number of units, and gradually your sample size increases like a snowball, rolling snowball. So these are the non-probability sampling technique. So sampling technique can be majorly classified into two categories: probability sampling technique and non-probability sampling technique. Okay. Now I am moving ahead to the next system, that is sample size of the study. Sometimes you used to think that sample size means just a number, and it is not a big deal that, to decide the number you just take any random number. Let's take 50. Let's take 100. By 100, calculate 300, it will be easy to calculate it. Irrespective of any other calculation. To keep in mind, I just want to show the level of work that we have to do before deciding the exact number of elements in sample size. There are 9 points that we have to keep in mind while deciding the sample size. The first thing that we have to keep in mind is our universe. Our sample size should be representative of our universe. So what is our universe? All teachers, all cardiologists, all civil engineers, our universe, or complete one district, complete one block, complete one village of so and so area is complete universe that we have to keep in mind while deciding the sample size. The second point that we have to keep in mind while deciding the sample size is purpose of the. If it is a cross-sectional study, then we have to keep in mind that it is a prevalence study, how much sample size we should take. If it is a descriptive or explanatory or exploratory study, we should always keep in mind this also while deciding the sample size. If we are going to study qualitative study, if we want to conduct a quantitative study, then again sample size differs. In qualitative study, because it is more in-depth in nature, so sample size will be less. In quantitative study, because we are going for survey or for closed-ended questions, or our tool will not be so extensive for data collection, it takes less time, then we can decide bigger number of sample size. Accessibility of the elements, yes, of course, if the units are not that much accessible, then it will be very tough by keeping a large number of sample size. So accessibility is, so if it is a common disease, for example, if you want to study the major reasons of diarrhea, diarrhea is very common. But if you want to study autistic patients or patients of autism, accessibility is not easy. Then we have to keep in mind the prevalence. That's why we used to say that you have to go through the studies that has been conducted and the prevalence that they have taken, so that we can decide the accessibility of the elements. Now, cost of obtaining elements. For example, if you want to measure the hemoglobin estimation, for example, and you have to take the hemoglobin estimation for each and every patient. So cost of obtaining elements you should always keep in mind while deciding the sample size. If it is a costly affair, if you are going to do some investigation which costs you, then you have to keep in mind that your sample size should be not that much enough that you are not able to manage. Variability required. Yes, of course, it is again very important. External validity means whether your sample size is robust enough to ensure the external validity, means it whether it is correct representative of your universe. If variability is not sufficient, then your external validity should not be ensured. The next is confidence level. How much you are confident that your study results will be correct, and if any other researcher will conduct the same study, then also he or she will get the same results, almost same results. This is confidence level, 95% confidence level, or 97% confidence level, or 99% confidence level. So it also depends on the confidence level, that how much sample size you are going to decide. Now, sampling error is also very important to keep in mind while deciding the sample size and while calculating the sample size. Even in formulas also, you can keep the value of sampling error to make it more precise and correct calculation of sampling size. And sampling distribution. For example, if you are going to conduct a study in which you are going to stratify it, then sampling distribution should be correct. So sometimes you must have heard about population proportion by size, PPS. So sampling distribution should always keep in mind while deciding the sample size. So I think you will be able to appreciate that how much groundwork you have to do before deciding the main elements of the sample size. Fine. Now I'm moving ahead with inclusion and exclusion criteria. Yes, this is very, very important and very simple, very important, very simple, but a lot of mistakes usually occur in deciding inclusion and exclusion criteria. First of all, I want to make it very, very clear that while writing your methodology section, always inclusion criteria will come first, because exclusion is the part of inclusion. For example, if you want to conduct a study on all the women of reproductive age group, means to 49 years of age. All women of reproductive age group, that is 15 to 49 years. It means of your universe, you have identified all women aging from 15 to 49 years. It means all under 5 male child, under 15 male child has been excluded. Or this is another example. It means all under 15 males and above 49 males were excluded, and even females are excluded. This is exclusion criteria. Now come on inclusion criteria. Now come on exclusion criteria. We, we have identified all women of reproductive age group. Out of this, who will be excluded? Those women with chronic illness, or those women who are not willing to participate in the study, or those women who get migrated from that universe of study will be excluded. So exclusion is decided from your inclusion criteria. Whatever inclusion you have decided, exclusion is from that specific group. So always inclusion comes first and exclusion comes later. The wrong example is all under 5 male child. Once you have mentioned in inclusion criteria that all under 5 male child will be included, then there is no need to mention in the exclusion criteria that all under 5 female child will be excluded. It is very understood. If you have mentioned that in inclusion criteria all under 5 male child will be included, it means all under 5 male child will be excluded. There is no need to mention. Now what will come under the exclusion criteria? Out of all under 5 male child who are chronically ill, who are admitted not able to participate in interview, who are not willing to participate, those male childs will be excluded. So exclusion always comes after writing the inclusion criteria, and those who are included but because of some reason they are not able to participate in the study will be considered under exclusion criteria. I think I'm clear. Is it okay? So methodology should not be problem blind. What is the research problem? What is the research question? This should always be in mind while deciding your methodology. First. Second, unnecessary explanation of basic procedure, that I have collected this by these means, from these books, by mentioning the review of literature, mentioning the basic introduction. It, it is sheer wastage of time and money while writing your methodology section. So never mention unnecessary explanation of basic procedure in methodology section. Irrelevant detail, irrelevant, which is not at all required. For example, some other studies, some other place or venue related details, some other details related to what problems or challenges we have faced while collecting the data, or while visiting the universe of the study, or while analyzing the data. These are some of the irrelevant details, and it should not be the part of methodology. Then literature review. No, not at all. Literature review is completely different section, which comes in a different umbrella of the thesis. So literature review related to any design or any type of study or any tool should not come in methodology section. Sometimes what students used to do, they used to mention the literature related to such design that they have selected. No need of it. They used to mention the literature review related to the tool of the study that they have adopted, or the analysis technique that they have adopted. No need of mentioning any review literature related to any section of the methodology. And the last is, it's more than source of information. It should not be done. Only source of information should not be given in the methodology section. It should be very crisp, very straightforward, and all the 6 components must be addressed well in the methodology section. these are some of the do's and don'ts of methodology section. I think I have mentioned each and every important section of methodology, and I'm open for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, again for a knowledgeable session delivering with all, sharing with all delegates. So, is there any query regarding this session? Please, I allowed everyone to unmute you at their end.
Yeah. Any question, I will be happy to answer. I want to clarify if there is any confusion related to my lecture.
नमस्कार मैम.
Yeah. Namaste, sir.
मैम आपने जो है केस स्टडी को डिस्क्रिप्टिव स्टडी में रखा है. जो क्लासिफिकेशन था,
Pardon, sir?
जो आपने टाइप्स ऑफ स्टडी डिजाइन दिया है, टाइप्स ऑफ स्टडी डिजाइन,
जी.
उसमें केस स्टडी को मैम आपने डिस्क्रिप्टिव स्टडी में रखा है.
हाँ.
तो इज इट नॉन इंटरवेंशनल स्टडी?
Sir, case study is not always interventional. Case study is sometimes descriptive in nature.
Okay, if you
Case has been already covered. Now you are going to take it in detail. So
Ma'am,
such type of case series
so
comes under descriptive sections.
so it can also be under interventional study.
Yeah, of course, sir. If it you can only keep case studies in intervention if you are planning some specific intervention in specific cases, and you are taking the pre and post evaluation of that intervention.
Okay.
Then it will be considered as interventional studies.
Okay, so
Not exactly case studies.
okay, we can say case study may fall under descriptive and simultaneously under interventional study also.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Is there any more doubt? You can feel free to ask, clarify your doubts.
Or you can mention in the chat box also.
Definitely, ma'am.
Any other question?
If there is any doubt, you either write in the chat box or meet yourself, because the further session depends on these concepts. We are moving towards study design from tomorrow, and then on sampling, estimation of sampling, then practical session, then how to calculate sampling using G power. So before that, you need to clarify all basic concepts. So is there any doubt? You just clarify your doubt with our respected resource person, ma'am. I hope, ma'am,
No more questions, I think.
already everything is discussed. So thank you again, ma'am, for delivering one more wonderful session in this 1 month journey of the program. I thank you again from all organizers of this program for your contribution in this program. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you.
So all delegates, tomorrow we are moving towards research design, and then towards sampling design, and that session will be delivered by Dr. Ratan sir, then Dr. Padam Singh sir on sampling design. This week cover research design and sampling design. So try to connect 10 minutes earlier, and a request to all delegates, please avoid calling during the live session. If any doubt, any confusion, any difficulty, you can call us at 10 to 4 p.m. every day. Thank you everyone. This is the end of today's session.